Hi and welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. This is the B-movie review, and today I'm going to be having a look at a zombie film called Before Dawn that was just launched a couple of weeks ago here in the UK. So this is a British zombie film, relatively low budget. Now, before I really get into the review, if you've seen another review of mine of a film called State of Emergency, this film very much reminds me of the British equivalent of that film. So it basically, the main story, and I'll come on to that again in just a minute. The main story really is about a couple, and what I quite liked about this, they're not your sort of young kids and what have you. They're kind of in their sort of mid-30s to early 40s maybe, and they're kind of going off to a sort of a country retreat to sort of try and repair a marriage. We're not given too much information about, obviously what has happened to them, but you can kind of pick up obviously the idea that these guys are in some sort of like marital troubles, and it's quite good. It does give you the audience some credit on piecing this together without actually having to massively spell it out initially. So that was quite good. And I think the actors actually came across very naturally and seemed like a very natural couple and type of people. They weren't particularly the most beautiful people ever and stuff. So it's very, very much like a real person, point of view here. Anyway, so they go off in the country and I'll try and sort of repair maybe the damage that's happened to them in the marriage, fairly unsuccessfully, admittedly. And in about half an hour into this film, so it does have a fairly long sort of start up. You will see your sort of first sign of anything that's going wrong here. And basically, the wife is just going out for a run. Then she suddenly sees this like man running towards her. Who's kind of like in a suit, which I have to question. Why is he in a suit in the country? But there you go. With all sort of blood, and she sort of initially just stands there thinking, "Why is this guy running towards me?" Which, to be fair, is probably what you would do. And then as she gets a bit closer, and she sort of sees he's kind of screaming, kind of got blood all down his front, and she ends up running. And this sort of zombie basically catches up to her and manages to bite her on the leg, but she does manage to get away. Now, obviously, all of you who are sort of familiar with zombie lore know what a bite means. So, eventually, she makes her way back to the farmhouse and kind of, doesn't really know what's going on. They're kind of cut off from everyone, so they can't get very good reception. They don't seem to get any TV signals, so they kind of don't really. I'm not aware of what's happening. They kind of have, they have intermittent signal with their phone, and they've got 6 missed calls from this woman's mother and stuff like that. And so there's obviously something going on in the outside world. Basically, the husband is kind of like doesn't understand what's wrong with her. He just thinks she's sick and kind of like wants to sort of like try and look after her. Until he goes down into the garage where there's another zombie sort of just hanging around in there, which I'm guessing must be the owners of the house that they're living in. And it's quite a long, drawn out fight scene between this zombie and this guy. And it was really good because you really get the idea that this guy is absolutely panicking, and I really like that because he's not holding it together. And there's one zombie and. He just and you get this really impression that he's absolutely scared shitless, and I really liked it. And the zombie, I have to say, looks really good. Now, we're never told, much like State of Emergency, if these are actually zombies, as in they're undead, or whether they're kind of infected people, very much like the 28 Days Later. This never again sort of says either way, but unlike State of Emergency, it's a bit more consistent in the way they act. So they're sort of fast and kind of like very much looking like the mobility of that sort of like 28 Days Later, although they seem to be very, very facially look like dead people to me. Anyway, so I think then the husband is goes back to his wife. He manages to kill this zombie and maybe sort of starts to realise that his wife may be suffering from the same thing, and eventually, obviously, she turns into a fully fledged zombie, where he sort of ultimately has to sort of stuff her in the downstairs sort of like basement area, and she looks like a very, very threatening makeup, and I have to say, I really like the look of these guys. You've also got like another sort of traveller who turns up and kind of ends up shedding a little bit of light on what's happening, and apparently this is happening at least nationally in the UK. We were never told about obviously overseas or anything like that. And then basically, I'm not going to spoil the ending of this film, but it's you know, it's a fairly downbeat film, but I don't think zombies are particularly a terrifying anymore as a horror film. You kind of watch them, they kind of, you know, you don't really feel all that sort of like that feeling of dread. But in this one, I actually got a tinge of that. It's kind of like, I think it worked quite effectively as a horror. You know, the zombies seem genuinely scary and threatening. There's never, not until very right at the end, there's never more than sort of one zombie on screen at a time. You know, so, but we're not really told any information about it. But the sense of dread that it's sort of building up, and the acting, and just the way the guy's just breaking down because he just can't deal with what's happened to his wife, and his wife's screaming in the basement. He's just curled up on a chair, and you know, I just don't know what to do. You know, I really liked it. There's another character who ends up sort of in the last act of the film, last quarter of the film. Maybe I thought his acting probably wasn't as good, to be quite honest. He came across as a bit of a cheesy caricature, but the main two actor and actors I thought were fantastic. I thought they really gave that sort of real sense of you know, these are real characters, and the way they react. Great. So obviously I'll give props to the sort of the writing and the directing for this one as well. The one thing I would say, maybe the directing, some shots are a little bit out of focus to me. There's a couple of shots where it's meant to be out of focus. I appreciate that, but it just seems to be, just sometimes it just seems to be a little bit out of focus to me. Again, that's kind of a minor gripe. But as a zombie film, I thought it was a genuinely quite a scary film, quite a thing that sort of fills you with a bit of dread. I thought the makeup was great. You know, a fairly slight storyline, to be fair. It's more of just a snapshot of what's happening with two people in the sort of midst of the zombie apocalypse, much like the film State of Emergency. But this does it, in my mind, a hell of a lot better. And it's, as I say, it's far more consistent. With State of Emergency, you had one zombie that ended up talking, and you had some zombies that looked like they were kind of like skeletals. Other ones just looked like people with blood on their face. So, but this film is far more consistent, and although like State of Emergency, we never really told too much information about, you know, what's happened. I don't think you need to in this one, because you're just taking the point of view from these guys, and you know, it works because of that. So I really enjoyed this film. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. I'd recommend to see it if you're a zombie fan or just a horror film in general. So go see it, and I look forward to seeing you next time.